Hello again everyone from Tokyo, Japan, and welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera. I'm coming to you from Hinokicho Park at Tokyo Midtown on a very quiet Sunday morning. Normally on April 5th on a Sunday here at Hinokicho Park it would be insanely crowded. The building across the way where you can see three people relaxing on the bench, on any Sunday in springtime normally you couldn't find a place to sit in that building. The lawn over to the left is quite popular this time of year for people having picnics to enjoy the spring weather. And every year my family and I host a party here at the park, and all of our friends come over and we relax under the trees and enjoy the cherry blossoms and eat and drink and have a good time. And if I need a spot, I usually have to get here about 7 o'clock in the morning to get a good spot. By 8 o'clock most of the good spots are taken, and if I come after 10 o'clock there are no spots at all. So it's very quiet and slow at the park today. I've been reading the news around the world about the lockdowns and self-isolation and things which are going on in other parts of the world, and also the frightening amount of cases and fatalities which I see in the news in places like New York or Italy or Spain or England right now. And it seems that things are not so bad here in Tokyo as compared to these other countries. Tokyo is quite a heavily populated city. In the city center we have a population of over 9 million, and the greater metro area has a population of 36 million people. And the train and subway system sells about 40 million tickets every day, which is an incredible amount. That gives you an idea of how many people live here and how close everyone lives to each other. But as of yesterday, we had about 2,500 cases of confirmed cases of coronavirus in Japan, and less than half of those being in Tokyo. Though yesterday Tokyo had more than 100 new cases in a day for the first time. The reason there are so few cases, or reasons, I'll try to explain those a little bit. First, the cases are not as few as the official reports would indicate, because in Japan, like elsewhere, they only test people who have serious symptoms or who are at risk. The actual number of cases is of course going to be much higher. But even so, the amount of confirmed cases from people showing symptoms is quite low compared to other countries. This is due to a few things. First, though people live quite close together in Japan, and they don't practice social distancing in the way you would expect it in places like California. They are able to practice on a more like I guess close basis. Japan is not a very touchy-feely place. People here do not hold hands, they don't shake hands, they don't hug, and they don't kiss in public. Though everyone is close together, everyone seems to be like within their own small, private, confined space. Personal hygiene is practiced very well here in Japan. People keep their hands clean, they brush their teeth, they wear clean clothes. The city itself is very clean. Trash is picked up. Tables and door handles and things like that are normally kept clean in restaurants and shops and places like that. During the SARS outbreak, which occurred 11 or so years ago, businesses quickly put out hand sanitizer in front of their doorways, and it became common to see these in front of all schools, museums, public buildings, and large shopping centers and things like that. And though the SARS outbreak ended without much drama here in Japan, the practice of putting hand sanitizer in front of businesses didn't end. And it's quite easy to find in most places all year round. And now that the coronavirus outbreak is here, pretty much every place has it. In my condominium building behind me, there's a bottle by every elevator, there's a bottle by the front door, and there's even a bottle by the elevator where I go to the garage to get my car. So pretty much I can sanitize my hands 3 or 4 different times before I even get out of the building. And of course in the shopping center next to Midtown you can find it everywhere there as well. Another thing is masks. Masks have been popular in Japan for more than a century. Masks have not been used so much to prevent the spread of disease here, but for protecting people against pollen. In the springtime now, this is the kafunsho season, when cedar trees and other plants are putting out large amounts of pollen, and in Japan lots of people are allergic to this pollen. And normally at this time of year, maybe 30% of people would be wearing masks. And now that the coronavirus outbreak here, most people seem to be wearing masks. And though masks themselves aren't particularly effective against catching a virus, they are very good at limiting the spread of a virus. When it comes to catching a virus, a mask is as good at keeping out viruses as a fishnet is at catching water. It's not really so effective for that. But for people who are sick, a mask can catch a lot of the virus which you exhale or cough out or sneeze, and prevent it from entering the air around you. Most viruses are not airborne unless you're really, really close to someone and they sneeze, close enough to where you can catch some of the debris on your face. Most viruses are caught through your hands. When I was a younger man, I was a medical specialist in the Army, and I was in charge of the health and welfare of my company in my unit in the Army. And it was my job to make sure that the soldiers in the company were, keeping themselves clean, that they brushed their teeth, that they trimmed their fingernails and toenails, that they kept their hands clean, that they took showers every day, all this kind of stuff. And this was important to prevent the spread of viruses and sicknesses in places where people live close together. Because if one person in the Army barracks catches a cold, pretty much half of the barracks has caught the cold. It happens very quickly. So it's important always to keep your hands clean. Wearing a mask kind of helps in that, because if you're wearing a mask, it makes it difficult to touch your mouth and nose, and can also remind you not to touch your eyes. Masks are effective in that situation. In Japan, N95 masks are unheard of. I had never seen or heard of one before the coronavirus outbreak until I saw news of them about them in America. They've never sold them in Japan. The masks sold here are simply just designed to keep out pollen. People do wear them here when they get sick to kind of limit the spread of cold or something like that. In Japan, if you catch a cold, you're still expected to come into the office, but most people who catch a cold will wear a mask in the office to kind of show appreciation to their coworkers. They would rather have you come into work wearing a mask than call in sick and not come in. That's been kind of one of the sore or sticking points in the virus problem here in Tokyo, is the business culture, which is quite old. Business in Japan is traditionally done face-to-face, and Japanese people are not really comfortable with teleconferences or telecommuting. And even in the face of the outbreak of the virus, companies have taken rather slowly to starting work-from-home programs. They're starting to catch on more and more, but still the majority of Japanese people, office workers especially, are commuting to and from work every day. But even so, once again, the virus outbreak doesn't seem to be so strong here, at least not at this time. It's interesting, the office culture here, because there's a lot of importance placed on showing up, on arriving on time or a little early every morning, and working the entire day and leaving late in the afternoon or evening when everyone goes. And often, just showing up seems to be more important than actually doing work. People work a lot of hours here in Tokyo, but the amount of work they actually do during those hours is kind of limited. A friend of mine works for a company here in Japan, which was actually a foreign company, an American company. And for whatever reason, a dozen years ago or so, their president was fired, and a new president was brought from London to run the company. And the first thing she noticed was how many hours the staff were working, but how little work was actually done. So she insisted that everyone leave no later than 7 o'clock every day instead of the 10 or 11 o'clock they were leaving, and still get the amount of work done. And everyone in the office was kind of shocked and horrified and thinking that the world was going to end, because there's no way they would be able to get their work done. But within a month, they were all getting their work done by 7 o'clock, and people were happy to be able to get home 2 or 3 hours earlier than they used to get home. So Japan is kind of an odd place like that. And a lot of people have some, as one of the silver linings to the coronavirus outbreak, they're hoping that maybe the business culture here will change and will allow people more people to work from home in work where you don't really have to come to the office. Commuting in Tokyo is quite a nightmare at times. I used to have to commute when I first came here. I worked for I lived in the west part of Tokyo, and I worked in the central part. And my afternoon commute home used to be quite a nightmare. Every day I would go to Takada no Baba station to catch the Seibu Shinjuku line to take me to where I lived. And the platform would be completely packed full of people. And the escalators would be bringing more and more people down. And it was always like frightening to me that if the train didn't arrive on time, the escalators don't stop and just keep piling more and more people on the platform, that inevitably they must start falling off the platform and onto the train tracks. But always just a fraction of a moment before people began falling off the platform, the train would show up, the doors of the train would open, and I wouldn't even have to walk, just the crowd would carry me into the train. And the only worry I would have was trying to get to the door to get off at my stop. So every time the train stops, I kind of shuffle around somewhere in the complete packed mass of people in the train to try to position myself so I'd be close enough to the door so I could get out at my stop and not have to, get off at the next stop or a later one and get on another train coming back, to get home. So in an environment like that, it's hard to imagine that a virus cannot pass, I guess expand explosively in the city. But for the most part, it's not so bad yet. The news here in Japan has been quite objective when it comes to reporting the virus. They're pretty much only reporting facts and figures, and they're not really reporting anything about, they're not trying to sensationalize the story, and they're not assigning blame to anyone or any country. And as a result here, since the news is not sensational and not making people afraid, for the most part people are calm and are just taking things in stride and doing what they have to do. There are no shortages in any of the stores. It's easy to buy milk, butter, eggs, cheese, rice, flour, things like that. There was a shortage of toilet paper here for 3 weeks or a month or so, but now it's back on shelves in stores. Masks ran out for a short time, but since so many people wear masks and there's a large infrastructure here to manufacture them, now there seems to be no shortage. You can buy them just about anywhere. So for that, there doesn't seem to be much change. Though things are really quiet here, most shops and stores are still open, even though they aren't getting much in the way of customers and they aren't staffed as heavily as they normally are. It's quite interesting to watch the tour buses leave on tours with only the driver and the tour guide in there and not a single passenger yet. They leave on time and do their tour route every single day. Japan is kind of odd that way. Sometimes I would go on bus trips to Chiba or places like that to go hiking, and some days the bus is crowded and some days I'm the only passenger. It's hard to imagine, a bus making a 120-mile round trip with just one passenger and have to pay for, the fuel, the driver, the maintenance on the bus, not to mention the road tolls, and despite all of that, still run, even if they aren't making close to enough money to pay for all of that. So, kind of an odd thing. Looking around the figures around the world right now, it's hard to know when the coronavirus is going to end. At the moment, it seems the news I follow and figures and things, it's really hard to know what's going on because numbers are difficult things. No number that we really have so far is really accurate. The only numbers which are remotely close are fatality figures, and even those, there's quite a large margin for error. First, because a lot of people who are dying from coronavirus or who are infected with coronavirus are people who are already dying and were sick with another illness. They tested positive for the virus, but the virus didn't actually kill them. Whereas there are people who die but who weren't tested for the virus before, and since they weren't tested for the virus before, they're not tested for the virus after they die. So the fatality figures are kind of hard to pin down accurately. As for the number of infected people, there's actually no way to come close to predicting how many people are actually infected, because a large percentage of the people who are infected show no symptoms and don't get sick. And a lot of other people who get sick and show symptoms may not believe it's the coronavirus. Right now it's the Kafunsho season here in Japan, where many people are suffering from allergies, and mild cases of the virus are very similar to common allergies. And many people here will be coughing and sneezing and stuff like that, and automatically assume that it's allergies. And in many cases they'll be right, and they recover from it, and and that's it. However, if they were infected with the virus, of course they've carried around and possibly spread it to other people, many of whom won't get sick, and some of whom will get sick. So it's going to be a really long time until we can figure out exactly how many people have the virus and have any firm information about it. The only positive thing I see in the news is that places like Italy and Spain, the fatality rate seems to be peaking. And in the case of Italy, the numbers of fatalities have been declining for the last 2 or 3 days. Unfortunately, places like New York or America, UK, and France, the numbers are still climbing steeply upwards, and it's hard to say when the illness is going to reach its peak there. Here in Japan, and elsewhere, it's difficult to make any kind of plans. The Olympics here has been postponed until 2021. They are still having baseball games and sporting events and things like that here, but the stadiums are empty. So the baseball practice and other sports, they're holding the events just because these people, the athletes have jobs, and this is what they do for work, and people are still interested in the games and seeing people play. It's just now no one can go to watch them. The sumo tournaments are to be played in empty stadiums, so there's no ticket sales or anything like that. However, the sponsors and stuff are still sponsoring them. The Tokyo Marathon was held last month, and rather than the tens of thousands of people who normally run in it, only the elite runners, a few people participated. So quite a big change here. But everyone is hoping, and the predictions that the most reliable people seem to be able to come up with is that hopefully by the end of June, this problem should have peaked around the world. And once it has peaked, then we can kind of get a more accurate idea of when things are going to return to some kind of level of normalcy. In regards to what I do in my business, selling cameras, that's what this channel was for, was to kind of support sales from my Etsy and eBay camera stores. Flights have been suspended from Japan to many parts of the world, so pretty much I'm not doing any of this business now, and I'm just working my normal job. My wife is working from home, and our daughter is home from school every day because her school is now closed for the rest of the school year. So we're all hoping that one day we'll be able to return back to our normal lives, as I'm sure everyone watching this hopes. But anyway, I think 18 minutes is long enough. I hope some of you have learned a little bit about what is going on in Tokyo, Japan. And I hope everyone it does well and stays healthy, and that we all get through this, and next year is a better year. Thanks a lot for watching, and good luck to you all.